next news. Breaking news from the White House.
I'm Gary Franchi reporting from inside the White House press briefing room, where President Trump has just done what 7 presidents before him were too afraid to do. The USS Tripoli is racing across the Pacific at full speed, loaded with over 2,000 Marines. U.S. strikes are pounding targets deep inside Iran as we speak. And one historian is making a comparison that will send chills down your spine. Churchill and Trump. So stay right here. Now, folks, you got to hear me. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has terrorized Americans. They took our hostages. They blew up our barracks. They attacked our embassies. And what did we do? 7 presidents, 7 promised to deal with it, and every single one of them backed down. Every single one of them left office saying that they regretted not taking action. Well, not anymore. President Trump is finally doing what needed to be done decades ago. And if you think that this doesn't affect you, well, think again. You see, the Strait of Hormuz controls 20% of the world's oil supply. That's your gas prices, your heating bill, that's your groceries. See, it's about your wallet, it's about your family, and about whether America finally stands up to the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. So what happens in the next few weeks will define global security for an entire generation. And speaking of protecting what matters most to your family, there is something that you need to hear. And pay close attention. New numbers out of Washington show that inflation's on the rise again. Another threat to you, your savings account, and your retirement. So ask yourself an honest question. What does the next decade look like for you and your savings? If your portfolio lacks exposure to gold, one of history's most reliable economic hedges, it's time to rethink your strategy. Gold has kept up with inflation, and many periods outpaced it. My friends at Noble Gold Investments specialize in helping people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver, and right now, all new qualified accounts will receive a free 10th ounce American Gold Eagle as a thank you. Visit nextnewsgold.com and discover how easy it is to protect your financial future. That's nextnewsgold.com. Now, back to the breaking developments overseas. I'm going to show you exactly what is unfolding right now, because what you're about to see explains everything about why Trump is taking this historic action. We've got 4 critical pieces of video that lay out the full picture. First up, a renowned historian making a comparison that the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. I'm talking about Victor Davis Hanson, one of the most brilliant historians alive today. He just went on the record comparing President Trump to Winston Churchill. Now, before you watch this, understand what he's saying. Churchill warned the world about Nazi Germany for years and nobody listened. They called him crazy. They called him a warmonger. Sound familiar? Now watch what Hanson says about the last 47 years of American failure. Watch.
In 1939, Churchill had warned everybody about the threat of fascism on the continent, Nazis, Italians, and Japanese, and nobody listened to him. And then after the war broke out, nobody called on him, and then finally he came in, and from May 10th of 1940, he was saying to everybody, these people want to take over the whole continent. And we weren't in. The Russians were on the side of the Germans
the
at
Nazis.
That time under the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, and he was the voice in the wilderness. And that's what Trump is trying to do. He's trying to say to the American Democratic Party, what's left of it, you don't understand what's going on here. You Europeans don't understand. You people in the Middle East don't fully understand what this regime is about. And when people say, well, we didn't have an imminent threat, we didn't have an imminent threat when they took our hostages, when they blew up our barracks. Nobody said we better attack Iran because we need an imminent threat when they blew up our embassy. They always acted spontaneously with surprises, and we never knew what they were going to do. So the idea that you have to have a telegraphed imminent threat, it's not the nature of that regime. It's lying, disguise, and dissimulation, and that's their pattern for the last 47 years. But nobody's taken them serious. Every president said we're going to deal with this, all 7 of them, and all 7 of them did not. And then all 7 of them, when they got out of office, said, I regret that I didn't. And he's the first one that warned the world and said it's not going to be one of those presidents.
Did you catch that? Hanson said every single president for 47 years promised to deal with Iran, and all of them, when they left office, said they regretted not acting. Lies, disguise, and dissimulation. That's how he described the Iranian regime. No telegraphed warnings, no imminent threats that you can predict, just spontaneous attacks on Americans. And Trump, he's finally saying enough. And you can hear Hail to the Chief playing in the background. But here's where it gets tactical. How do we actually secure the Strait of Hormuz? General Jack Keane just laid out the military strategy, and He's going to break it down, the timeline for securing the strait. Remember, the strait controls a massive chunk of global oil. Iran has been threatening to choke it off for decades. Now watch what the general says about how long it's going to take and why our reluctant European allies are falling in line. Watch.
It'll take probably 10 days, a couple of weeks to make certain that if we bring vessels through the Straits of Hormuz, we minimize the risk significantly. We likely have to put something on those ships also in terms of counter drone capability, and there are fairly sophisticated capabilities that we can put on there as a defensive measure. We asked the Europeans to do something since post-World War II, even though sometimes they may not agree with us, even so sometimes they begrudgingly, what do they finally do? They come along. Why do they do that? Because the United States is an indispensable leader, and they cannot survive in NATO without the United States being a member of it. That's the facts on the ground, and we'll get their cooperation here.
President Trump delivering remarks right now. But 10 days to 2 weeks, that's the timeline General Keane just gave us. Counter-drone capabilities on every vessel moving through that strait. And here's the key line. The United States is the indispensable leader. Europe may not always agree with us, but they always come along. Because without America, NATO crumbles. And that's the reality. And while we're talking timelines, there is a warship right now racing across the Pacific that Iran should be absolutely terrified. We've got satellite tracking of the USS Tripoli, and folks, this is extraordinary. This amphibious assault ship carrying over 2,000 Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit. Open source intelligence tracking it in real time. The wake of the ship is so large, analysts can tell it's going, and I quote, hell for leather towards the Middle East. Watch this breakdown.
However, that change isn't going to be instant. An open source intelligence update shared by MT Anderson on X notes that the USS Tripoli is moving at a very high speed toward the Middle East. This can be tracked via satellite photos, which show the ship's wake is large enough to indicate that it's going hell for leather to get to the Middle East. However, even at such a high speed, the ship and its grouping still have to make it to the Middle East from where it's stationed in White Beach, which is in Okinawa, Japan. The warship was spotted approaching the Bashi Channel that lies between Taiwan and the Philippines on March 12th, and it may take another week or two before it arrives in the Middle East. But that doesn't change the headline. The US is sending Marines and amphibious warships into the Middle East. This is Iran's worst nightmare, especially when it comes to the leverage that Iran has in the Strait of Hormuz. But before we get into that, it's worth taking a closer look at what a Marine Expeditionary Unit is, as that gives us some hints about what the US may be considering with this latest deployment. These types of units are among the most versatile that the US military has to offer, with the New York Times noting that they're often referred to as America's 911 force. In other words, these are the units you call in when you have an urgent problem that needs to be solved. Marine Expeditionary Units have been used for everything from conducting counter-piracy operations to being the first to lay boots on the ground during major operations, such as they were during the war in Afghanistan back in 2001. These are self-sustained and rapid response forces that are structured to offer air, ground, and logistical elements that are split into 4 groupings. First up is the command element, which serves as the headquarters for the unit and offers support to all deployed forces. A ground combat element serves as the Marine Expeditionary Unit's heaviest hitter in terms of pure combat force. That element typically contains a Marine Infantry Battalion, complete with artillery support, reconnaissance assets, a team of engineers, and amphibious vehicles used to make landings on enemy territory. Throw in the aviation combat element and you get some air power added into the mix. A medium helicopter squadron that contains various models of transport choppers is part of this element. A Marine Expeditionary Unit may also bring fighter jets and attack helicopters into the theater, along with an air defense team and other aerial assets that support the soldiers on the ground. Finally, there's the logistics combat element. Transport, supplies, equipment, maintenance, and medical are all provided by this key supporting element. So this isn't the US sending a handful of soldiers into the Middle East. This is an elite Marine unit, serving as part of a larger amphibious assault team that signifies a total posture shift for the US. The impact of that shift is going to be felt most heavily in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been wreaking havoc in that strait, and it's clear to see why. Even with its military infrastructure utterly devastated on the mainland, Iran has managed to maintain a focus on the Strait of Hormuz. Fast boats operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, along with drones launched from Iran itself, have been targeting the commercial vessels that combine to highlight the Strait of Hormuz as one of the world's most important waterways. This is a passage of water that is just 31 miles wide at its entrance and exit, making it easy for Iran's boats to patrol, and it is key to the passage of 20 million barrels of oil every single day as of 2025. Iran's actions in that strait, which have almost completely shut down the waterway, barring a handful of ships that dare to make the crossing, threaten the entire global economy. That's according to CBS News, which reported on March 15th that Iran is turning the strait into a choke point by targeting commercial shipping, thus raising oil prices substantially. Right now, the outlet says, one of the US's key priorities is to wrest control of the Strait of Hormuz from the hands of the IRGC, which has already attacked at least 16 commercial vessels as of March 12th, killing 8 people and causing one to go missing in the process. And according to TWZ, only 77 ships have dared to cross the strait during the first half of March. For context, the same period in 2025 saw 1,229 passages through the Strait of Hormuz.
Did you hear how they described the Marine Expeditionary Unit? America's 911 force. These are the first boots on the ground when urgent problems need solving. Counter-piracy, Afghanistan in 2001, self-sustained rapid response with air, ground, and logistical elements, and right now over 2,000 of them are racing towards Iran's worst nightmare. But yesterday, just 24 hours ago, a reporter asked Trump point blank about Iran, about sanctions, about putting U.S. troops in the region. Now, a typical politician would hedge, they'd give you word salad about keeping options open and consulting with allies, but Trump gives them 5 words that destroyed their entire premise. And watch his face when he says it.
Do you intend to lift sanctions on Iranian oil, and do you intend to potentially put U.S. troops or more troops in the region?
No, I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you, but I'm not putting troops, and we will do whatever is necessary to keep the price as low. I actually thought when I did this, look, the Dow just hit 50,000.
Did you catch that? I'm not putting troops anywhere. Not we're evaluating options, not it depends on conditions, anywhere, period. And then he hits them with the Dow just hit 50,000. The man just confirmed America First foreign policy and reminded everyone the economy is soaring under his leadership in the same breath. That is how a winner operates. So, folks, what you have just witnessed is historic. For 47 years, 7 American presidents failed to confront Iran. They made promises, they expressed regrets, they let the world's leading sponsor of terrorism grow stronger. President Trump, like Churchill before him, warned everyone. Nobody listened. They called him dangerous, they called him reckless, but now Marines are racing to the Middle East. Strikes are hitting targets deep inside Iran. European allies are falling in line. In the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's ace in the hole is about to be secured in 2 weeks. This is what American leadership looks like. This is what happens when you finally have a president who keeps his promises. So, President Trump doing what needs to be done decades ago. And while the mainstream media wrings their hands and left screams about escalation, remember who's been attacking Americans for nearly 50 years. Remember who took our hostages. Remember who bombed our barracks, who killed our soldiers with IEDs in Iraq. Iran has been at war with the United States, and now finally we're fighting back. So if this report opened your eyes, share it with everyone you know. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you support President Trump's decisive action against Iran? Subscribe if you haven't. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a breaking update. I'm Gary Franchi reporting from the White House briefing room. We'll continue this tomorrow. Until then, stay informed, stay vigilant, and stay free.
The system controls information. Information control is power. I want you to see this. The truth only survives together. They don't want this shared. Share this now.